Hi guys, my name is Shabir Izzuddin bin Sulaimi, and today, me and my group mates will present about definition of nickel and nickel chloride. But first, let me introduce our group members. We have Nur Farah Atira, Nur Hidayatul Husna, Wan Nuranis Nabila, and myself Shabir Izzuddin bin Sulaimi.
Hi, my name is Nur Hidayatul Husna binti Muhammad Ibrani. I will explain the introduction of our studies. For the introduction, nickel is a transition metal with atomic number of 28, commonly forms a +2 oxidation state and has an atomic mass of 59 grams per mole. One of its key compounds is nickel chloride, often encountered as nickel chloride hexahydride, which appears green due to the presence of hexa-aquanickel 2 complex ion. Nickel chloride is widely used in wastewater treatment as a heavy metal adsorbent, industrial gas mask to absorb ammonia, in nickel electroplating, catalyst production, and in sodium nickel batteries. Its market size is growing rapidly with USD 1.3 billion in 2024 and projected to reach USD 2.5 billion by 2033 with a growth rate of 9.2%, especially in the Asia Pacific. Next, theory and history. First of all, our study aims to determine nickel content in nickel chloride hexahydride center by using precipitation method of gravimetric analysis. Gravimetric analysis is a quantitative method to determine an element or a substance through the measurement of the mass of its insoluble product. Historically, this method was shaped by pioneers like Robert Boyle in 1661, who published a book called The Skeptical Kindness that marked a shift towards scientific chemistry, and Antoine Lavoisier in 1700 who introduced the law of conservation of mass, which is a key foundation for quantitative analysis. Next, Torben Bergman introduced the gravimetric method for silica, which greatly influenced modern gravimetry. In 1800s, gravimetric techniques were further refined by chemists like Richard Kirwan, Martin Clapett, Louis Vauquelin, and finally Theodore W. Richard and his student in Harvard. We chose gravimetric analysis because it is the most accurate method of chemical analysis that offers high precision, reproducible results, and also it is easy to conduct without calibration and standardization steps, and allows direct mass measurement. Since nickel can be precipitated into a stable or uniform nickel 2 dimethyl glycoside.
Next is the type of method. The first type of gravimetric analysis is the precipitation method, which is the analyte will be converted to the soluble precipitate that is filtered and washed free from impurities. This stable and non-composition product is get by heating, and this product can be measured. Other than that, we have volatilization method, which is the analyte will volatilize at suitable temperature and the volatile product collected and weighed. Weight of the product is determined indirectly by weight of loss of the sample. Which method is the best to determine nickel in nickel chloride? The answer is gravimetric analysis. This is because this method is high accuracy and precision. It relies on mass measurements, which can be determined with very high certainty using analytical balance. And other than that, it is a low-cost procedure. The sample is simple, the reagents are cheap, and the analysis methods are straightforward, requiring minimal equipment. The last one is because it is selective precipitation. The use of dimethyl glycosine, specifically precipitated nickel, make it highly selective and reduce interference.
The next part is methodology. The chemical used in this experiment are hydrated nickel chloride, distilled water, hydrochloric acid, dimethyl glycosine, or we call it as DMG, ammonia dilution, and nitric acid. Other than that, we also list out the apparatus needed for this experiment, which are weighing board, beaker, Bachnel funnel, dropper, conical flask, filter paper, crucible, and vacuum filtration apparatus. So the procedure of this experiment contains 6 steps of gravimetric analysis. So the first step is preliminary treatment. So in these steps, we need to weigh 0.5 gram hydrated nickel chloride using analytical balance, and then dissolve it in 20 ml of distilled water and add on 5 ml HCl, which is hydrochloric acid, with 6 molarity. The second step is precipitation of precipitate. In this step, we need to heat the solution until 70 to 80 degrees C, and then once it reaches the temperature, add 35 to 40 dimethylcryosome, and then we need to add the ammonia dilution until forming the red precipitate. In digestion step, we need to let the mixture cool for several hours because dimethylcryosome only precipitate after a longer period. So we need to let it cool for complete precipitation. Once the mixture is cool, we can proceed to the next step, which are filtration and washing. First, don't forget to weigh a filter paper before filtration process. Then, we need to fold the filter paper and fit it into a funnel and wet the paper to make sure it is stay at the place, and then transfer precipitate from the beaker and all the solution carefully onto the filter paper, and then wash the precipitate with 5 ml of distilled water to the beaker, then rinse precipitate with 10 ml of nitric acid for 5 times through the filter paper. The next part is drying. In drying, we need to remove the filter paper with filtered precipitate and place it on a crucible and dry in oven for 45 to 55 minutes. Once the precipitate has dried and cooled, we can proceed to the last part, which is weighing. So in this step, we need to weigh the dry precipitates once it cool and use the record for calculating the percentage of nickel in this sample.
And now we move on to result and calculation. So for the results in gravimetric, so for the first apparatus, we have the watch glass, which weighs about 24.7423 grams. And the next, we have the mass of watch glass plus sample, which weighs about 25.3373 grams. And the next one, we have the sample, which weighs about 0.5950 grams. And the next, we have the mass of filter paper, which weighs about 1.2602 grams. And the next, we have evaporating dish, which weighs about 66.7229 grams. And the next, we have filter paper plus evaporating dish and precipitate, which weighs about 68.6228 grams. And lastly, we have the precipitate, which weighs about 0.6397 grams.
Next is the calculation to find the percentage of nickel in nickel chloride. We have to do the chemical equation. So this is the chemical equation when nickel react with glycosin to form the precipitate, which is nickel-based dimethylglycosamine. So to find the percentage is, the first step is to find the gravimetric factor. The formula is molecular weight of analyte over molecular weight of precipitate. In this experiment, the analyte is nickel and the precipitate is nickel-based dimethylglycosamine. So the molecular weight of analyte is 59 and the molecular weight of precipitate is 289. So the GF is 0.2042. The second step is find mass of nickel. The mass of precipitate in the result table is 0.6397 gram. So to find the mass of nickel, GF times by the mass of precipitate. The answer is 0.13906 gram. And then the last step is to find the percentage of nickel, which is mass of nickel over mass of the sample. So which is mass of the sample is nickel chloride. So 0.1306 gram over 0.5 0.595 gram times by 100. So the percentage is 29.95%.
And now we move on to the conclusion. The conclusion is gravimetry is a known method of quantitative analysis of a substance or component by measuring the weight of the component in its pure state after going through a separation process. Nickel content in the sample by gravimetric determination of 21.95%.